Hello, everybody, and welcome to the HTML All the Things podcast, episode number 39, the MacBook Adventures and Podcast Update. I'm your host, Matt Lawrence, and I'm joined again by my co-host, Mike Curran. Now, normally this is the part of the show where I'd be asking Mike what he was up to, and he'd say something like, I worked on some contract work and then planned out some hat content, and then it'd be passed to me, where I'd say, I also worked on some contract work and then did some work on hat. Obviously, there'd be some variance in there week to week, but it didn't really change much and just became a part of the routine for the show intro. So after receiving some advice and then looking at this part of the show ourselves, we decided that the reasoning behind having this weekly update was to sort of showcase our weekly tasks as small business owners and web developers, giving people a peek into the lives of someone in a similar career path or thinking of entering this field. However, it's rather obvious that we work on contract work and that we also work on hat on a weekly basis. So we're going to be changing this part of the show to a new related segment called Weekly Pain Points, where we talk about a problem that we had in the week prior and how we dealt or are dealing with it. Now, we hope that this will offer a quick glimpse into the week's events and cutting out that routine and still focusing on like a sort of a main highlight and a challenge that we had that week, to still give a little bit of that insight into our weekly doings. Weekly work doings? Is doings a word? I don't care. Anyway, furthermore, we think that the segments and the structure for the show are important, but we also received some feedback on having it maybe flow a little bit better, and specifically having it be more conversational versus going from bullet point to bullet point. And while we do agree that having a bit more flow is a good thing, we also think that the structure that we have aids those that are looking for a particular topic or those that are solely here to learn. So with this, we'll be keeping our segments intact and still having content within those segments be very similar to the way they are now, but we want to have more conversations within each segment and transition between them smoother. So instead of having one person talk for the majority of one segment and then have the other only add comments at the end, we're going to try to jump into each other's segments and drive a bit of conversation about what's being said within a segment. Now, I know that was long-winded, but I just think that it's really good to kind of talk about what these upcoming updates are going to be like, and hopefully it'll help us deliver a better show for you. And of course, please let us know your comments, your feedback, whatever, on the social channels. DM us on Instagram or on Twitter, or add us, or you know how to use your social channels. Just go ahead and do that, because we do check those. Now, this episode's a little bit different. We had a bit of a fiasco. This is a later episode if you follow the sort of schedule. So this is not a tidbit, but it is a bit of a shorter episode, and it's because of this whole MacBook scenario. So Mike, a few weeks ago, described that he was having issues with a MacBook that we purchased, and the issues rose again, and they got worse. So we're going to be mainly talking about that because we're on a bit of a time crunch today. We'll also be talking about, first and foremost, that new segment, Weekly Pain Points, but we will not be having a standard sort of segment to segment, point to point episode this week because we want to implement those changes that I just described in the next sort of quote unquote full episode. So that'll be episode 40. So without further ado, Weekly Pain Points. I'm going to pass it to Mike for his thoughts on this week.
Yeah, so my weekly pain point ties directly into what we're going to be talking about the whole episode. So I'll keep it short. MacBook Pro repair. So just dealing with my MacBook situation and the fact that I had a bunch of work due and I couldn't do it because I did not have a MacBook. So that's been sort of dealt with, but I'm not going to spoil it because I'll be talking more about that during the actual episode. So Matt, what has your weekly pain point been?
So same sort of thing, but it's been related to yours. So I haven't been dealing with the hardware so much, but I was trying to solve USB pass-through on a remote Mac or a Mac VM. And I was also trying to find an old quote so that we can actually charge a customer that we were supposed to charge a few months ago. Whoops on that. Unfortunately, we don't have a standard procedure for this sort of thing, as we found out. And so it's indicative that we're going to have to start implementing those. And that'll actually probably be a topic for a future episode. So without further ado, let's jump right into the web news, the MacBook fiasco, a little bit of a preface to this. Mike, take it away.
Oh, right. So essentially, I'll give a little bit of a background, what's been going on. So we've been using a MacBook for about, I think it's been like a year and a half now. Now we started with a really old one from 2009 or 2010. It was a unibody MacBook 13 inch, and it was pretty much purchased just so we could build Xcode projects. Because you need a Mac to be able to build anything for iOS. So even if it's a web application that you're packaging with something like Cordova, which is a readily available software for any device, Linux, Windows, including macOS, and from Windows and Linux, you can build for Android, for any other mobile platforms, no problem. Unfortunately, to build for iOS, you have to have Xcode and you have to have a Mac. So what we did, the solution was we got a older MacBook Pro, 13 inch, and we got it for around like 500 Canadian rupees. And it was just a utilitarian tool just to build. Every once in a while we'd have to do a build. Now, what happened was, as our relationship with our contract went on, we needed to use it more and more and more. And I would go on, my travels. And with those travels, I would have to bring pretty much the MacBook, because not only does the MacBook allow you to build for iOS, it's the only way to test and debug on iOS. So if there's any sort of iOS specific problem, you can't debug it without having the MacBook. So that meant that I had to bring this old MacBook that was, functional, but not exactly the greatest and the fastest thing in the world, with me on all my travels. And I would either have to bring both, which I did once. I brought my MacBook and a laptop with me, which was kind of a disaster. If anyone has been doing a lot of traveling, going through airport security with two laptops, having to open them up, turn them on every time you go through security is a real big pain. Not only that, obviously on the back, it's a pain as well, having to travel for like 24 hours. So that wasn't really an option. Then I traveled with just the MacBook, and that was okay. But again, everything was a lot slower. I had to program on a much smaller screen than I was used to. Even running like regular web app programming was just more of a pain point for me, really, as it went on. And I got to the point where I was like, okay, that's it. We're doing enough work with this MacBook that I need something a little bit better, a little bit bigger, a little bit newer. But the problem that I had, and I still have this problem, is that the newest MacBook Pros, 15-inch MacBook Pros, are just, I don't trust them. And I think a lot of people understand that. Like if you're in the Mac ecosystem right now, I'm sure you have the same kind of feeling. The keyboards on them, not only are they much more shallow within the older MacBook Pros and the regular really chiclet keyboard styles of any device that I've ever used, they also have a much higher failure rate. And without a keyboard, what's the point of a portable computer? That's what I need it for. I need to be able to go out. I try to program once a week outside my regular office, just to change it up and have a little bit more productivity and reset myself for the rest of the week. It's kind of one of the things that I do. So when I would take my old MacBook or take another computer, it was fine, but I had smaller screens. So with the new MacBook Pros, I was afraid of the keyboards. So I got an older one. It was a late 2013. It had everything in it that I needed, like a quad-core processor, 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigabyte SSD, even a dedicated graphics card, which is not something I particularly need, but whatever. It was there, which is great. And when it was working, it was fantastic. Like, honestly, it was night and day compared to the older MacBook. But all of a sudden, I would start to get these intermittent, super extreme slowdowns on this newer 15-inch MacBook Pro. And it would just slow to a crawl where, like, if I tried to even like open up all the windows, they would just stutter and kind of like slideshow it onto the screen, and having to go from window to window, and building a application was a very slow crawl, like could take 40 minutes just to build something. Updating anything was like an hour and a half. So essentially it was almost unusable during those times, and it happened very intermittently, very randomly, but for long periods of time when it did happen. So I was like, okay, maybe it's the battery. I went through a bunch of different software fixes. I went through a battery replacement, which is, if anyone's ever done that themselves on the Retina MacBook Pros, they know that that's a very involved process involving like thread and rubbing alcohol, like dissolving glue. Like, it was a whole process that my wife and I actually shared. It was quite a pain, but I got that done. We swapped the battery. Everything seemed fine, and then it came back. What essentially I ended up doing last week, and what brought this discussion on, was that I took it to a shop, gave it to them. They told me that, oh, we could probably repair it. Like, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, we repair these things all the time, even with these kinds of problems. And I was all excited because I just wanted a working MacBook back and I needed it. What I learned by the end of the day that day was that it's not that simple of a problem. They would need the whole weekend to diagnose it, especially because it was the long weekend, the Easter weekend. So I got some news on on Tuesday, yesterday, that they are not able to easily fix it. So it would be a very expensive fix. I think it was $600. And not only that, it would be it would be like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And the biggest problem with that time frame for me is that I have 3 or 4 projects very much depending on the MacBook, being able to build for iOS, being able to diagnose, like debug on iOS, having to use implement camera functionality in an iPad, stuff like that, like for a web app. So I had a lot of things that relied on that MacBook, and it's very urgent. Like, I have to get it out. You know, I have one build that's due tomorrow that, like, I already delayed a couple days. So what I ended up doing today was quickly driving to the closest Apple store to me, which is about 15 minutes away, and purchasing a, brand new 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro. So now that's where I sit. I have the MacBook Pro. I'm not very, I'm a little bit worried because I'm in this spot, and I think most of you can probably relate if you're using MacBooks, where yes, it's an okay machine. The keyboard's kind of annoying. I could maybe get used to it, but what really worries me is that, like, failure rate. Like, so let's say I go on a vacation or I go on a work trip and I only bring my MacBook Pro, and halfway through the work trip, the keyboard dies. So, like, the S button doesn't work or the space button doesn't work. Like, there's many, many different things that could stop working in a keyboard. If that keyboard dies during that trip, I'm SOL. Like, what am I supposed to do? I can't, even if I take it to the Apple store they're not going to be able to repair it for a couple days. So I can't work. So that's really where my highest level of concern is, in the reliability of these things. Not like it has a longer repair. Like, the keyboard on the 2017s has been extended to be repaired for 4 years. And the rumor is that the 2018s will be extended again to be like a free repair for over 4 years. But that's great and all, but I'm still losing the ability to use it during the repair time. So even if it's a day or two each time to repair, if the failure rate is high enough, that could be a huge amount of time for me wasted and money wasted because I need to get stuff done. So it's a worry when you're spending upwards of $3,000 to have a machine that you're not you can't rely on. So this is a big problem with me with Apple right now. How are we supposed to, it's great that you're building these thin machines. It's great that you're building these great tools for web developers, I guess. But why if you have these massive problems with your machines, you should be rushing out a fix that can fix all of them instead of just replacing them every 5 seconds. Like, try to engineer something that can not only replace but fix the problem somehow. Like, get that out as fast as possible. It's already been it's been since 2016. That's almost, over 3 years. How can you not have a fix for this? It's a professional product. How are people writers and stuff? Those people, type all day. Programmers, I mean, we type all day as well. How are people using these things and being able to reliably go on a vacation or being able to reliably go on business trips and not have to worry? We shouldn't have to worry about a $3,000 product. We shouldn't have to be concerned about this thing, the keyboard just all of a sudden breaking on us in the middle of using it. It's a crazy thing to happen. And there's another issue with some of the older ones. They might have solved it in the 2018, and it's the screen can sometimes stop working. I mean, that's a bigger issue than the keyboard even, but those are the kinds of things that really worry me. When it's only a few people complaining about it online, like every tech device can have an issue. But when you see every single tech reviewer, when you go on I think there was the company Basecamp. So they have recently did a study internally of their MacBook Pros, their newest MacBook Pros, 2018 MacBook Pros. I think they purchased 16 of them, which was like 6 or 7 months ago. I think out of the 16, 9 have exhibited the keyboard problems. That's over 50%. Like, that is unacceptable. How is that? How are we supposed to feel when we hear stuff like that? Like, this is not 2% of devices. I wouldn't be very worried if it was 2% of devices. It's not a big deal. But now I'm thinking this is 100% going to happen. Just when? I don't know. It's for me, that's a huge problem. So essentially my solution is, yes, I bought the MacBook. It has a 15-day return policy. I'm going to try to use it. I'm going to try to get used to it. If I like the keyboard, I'll have to make a decision, but I'm really hoping that the store that's fixing my MacBook Pro is able to fix it, even for that $600, so that I can go back to essentially an older but much more reliable device, which is crazy for me. Like, I can't even, 2013, this is, that's over 5 years old. And I'm very tempted, like, I'm going to be excited if they can fix it. And I'm going to be very happy to be using a 6-year-old device or even 7-year-old device over a brand new device that, yes, we can afford, like, our company can afford a new MacBook, but I can't afford to be down once every, few months for multiple days because the keyboard's not working. Like, to me, that's unacceptable. I hope that they're trying to fix it, but even if they do fix it, it's been 3 years. I have there's no words that I can say that can describe Apple right now with their quality control. Like, they're driving innovation force to make everything thinner. Johnny Ives, stop doing that. Like, please don't, like, just make it a little bit thicker. Give us a better keyboard that's not going to die. Like, just because you say something has to work this way and has to be this thin doesn't mean that your engineering team can do it. Obviously they can't. They failed horribly on this, and I just want to call it out. So anyone that's buying a new MacBook Pro, anyone that's buying a regular MacBook, what has your experiences been? Like, let me know if your keyboard has failed. Maybe, a bunch of people saying that their keyboard is fine. They've been working on a 2017 MacBook Pro for 3 years or 2 years and they haven't had any issues. Maybe that'll calm me down a little bit, but I haven't heard that. Anecdotal people that have no problems has been a lot less for me. And that could be because most people that have problems are the ones that, like, speak out about it. But even then, on, like, not on troubleshooting forums, I look on Reddit, like, those comment sections, people just using their MacBooks. They're not there to complain. Even they're talking about it. So that's what worries me, that the fact that I haven't heard any good anecdotal evidence that someone's MacBook is working fine for multiple years and they've spilled crumbs on it and stuff like that, and it's been fine. So that's essentially where I'm at with the MacBook thing. I don't know. I don't know. I hope I can get that 2013 fixed.
The thing with this whole scenario too is that we were looking for, like, frantically yesterday, we were looking for alternatives, and we were looking for a refurb, and we found a shop that could provide us with refurbs, and even the refurbs, because at this point we were going through a couple of different years, of whatever they had in their availability, and basically there was one that didn't have a hard drive, and I was like, oh, that's perfect, I don't care, I'll just put a hard drive in it. And then you corrected me and said, oh no, it's a proprietary NVMe drive. So I thought, oh, okay, great, so there's the proprietary drive now. And then there was another year that they said they had some lamination issue, and the lamination issue you said was also, apparently laminate comes off rather easily. Now, I'm not up to date on MacBooks at all. I didn't realize that this had all happened. I also was unaware that they were using proprietary hard drives, mostly because I just don't care about the Mac side of things for the most part. I understand that, our websites need to work on top of Safari and that type of thing, but I never really cared about, I don't care about a MacBook. Like, why would I look that up? That'd be like me looking up the latest Acer laptop that I don't use. It's like, who cares? Like, I'll do if I need to buy an Acer laptop, I'll just research it when I go to buy it. Like, I don't care. And the same goes with Samsung tablets. I have an older Samsung tablet now. I'm not going to look up the new ones until when or if I need one later. So all this had, like, flown by. I had no idea there was this many issues. I had heard about this keyboard issue though, because I did see the unveiling a few years ago of this, thin, more thin. I forget what the name of the switch is, but it's like the new switch that they use on their keyboards, and it's kind of discouraging. The butterfly switch, and it's very discouraging to hear from such an expensive product too. That, I also just bought a laptop, so, like, my desktop is over 7+ years old. I built it in college. My laptop, I think, is around the same age. I always forget. I know I bought my laptop after my desktop, but I think it wasn't that long after. So I think it was only months after, not even a year. So, we're talking, 7-8 years, in that range anyway. And so we bought, like, a new laptop, like a really good one. And that's what I'm going to be using. And we upgraded my desktop because my desktop is still working and still serviceable, knock on wood. So anyway, but, like, that that product, as far as we know, doesn't have these issues. That product was also 20, I forget how much it was now, 2,600 approximately. That was after tax, and that was shipped, and that was more powerful in terms of just internal like spec. If you look at the spec per part, it's more powerful as well. It's running Windows, of course it is, because it's me, but at the same time, it's like what's going on here? Like, why are these things so expensive when you can get a PC that's more powerful and it's less money? Now, this, of course, kind of falls into the trap of Apple's a closed garden and all that stuff, but the real problem I think that exists here is there's no alternative. As Mike said, there's no way for you to develop or debug for an iOS device without a MacBook, or like a Mac device. You could use an iMac or something like that, but like an Apple device, a compatible Apple device, even then, because even our really old MacBook couldn't do it. It has to be, a relatively newer Apple device, in this case a MacBook. On top of all that, we were looking for alternatives, and obviously the refurb was one alternative, but then we also looking for, like, I used to be an administrator in a lab, so like a network administrator. So what we used to do is we would always appliance everything out, is what I call it. It's not the standard term, but like that's what I call it. Is if I don't really want to use something too much, like I don't really like we're using the MacBook because we're using Mac because we need to, not because we want to, and it's not any sort of statement, if you will, if you can really make a statement with computers, but like if you get what I mean, because we were trying to just use it as a tool, and it's just pure utilitarian, at least until we could get the other one fixed. We try to go and look up, VMs. We try to go and look up alternatives that way, and then you run into a bunch of other issues with USB pass-through. You run into issues with all that type of stuff, because we went to a service called Mac in Cloud, and admittedly, we went for the free trial, and it spun up very fast. But then when we went to install a program that was supposed to allow the USB to go through, the trial doesn't include administrative access, so you have to go and get that. And then we just kind of stopped at that point, because it started, like, the cost started adding up, because there's like a bunch of options when you go I think we went for the dedicated option, if I remember correctly. The thing is like, what's the option here? If I, like, heaven forbid, I get a project that comes down the pipe one day, and I need to get a Mac, or I need to use anything on a Mac, I don't know that I could rely on something like Mac in Cloud. First of all, it's remote, right? So it was definitely, for us, it was definitely a tertiary solution, a temporary solution. But so, like, Mike goes to the cafe, or Mike goes out and works somewhere else, whatever. If he doesn't have really good connection to a remote VM, you're kind of screwed. So there's that problem. Even if I'm just out somewhere else and I don't have a good connection, you're screwed there. It doesn't matter what the heck that is. You have no, as far as we know, camera access. So if we need any sort of camera access at all, any sort of specific peripheral thing, like let's say if you're doing something for the MacBook and you need to do something with the MacBook's webcam, you can't really, as far as I understand, test that. You can emulate iOS devices on that thing, but without this USB working, you can't really do USB debugging either. And that's kind of what we were using. So yes, we put very little time into looking into that particular avenue, but it is an issue where you need to spin it up. But the issue would be solved if there was a half decent alternative to these MacBooks. Like, why are there several issues with newer MacBooks? The really old MacBooks are cut off from support, which that part is understandable, but the really old MacBooks are cut off from support. The ones that are, like, not on the chopping block, but, like, coming up, they're the last ones that are a bit more traditional. They have a proprietary hard drive, but they're, like, the ones that Mike bought and had broken. It's going to cost us $600 to replace two chips on the board. And this is not a regular computer shop. This is a place that fixes circuit boards. They have special equipment and whatever else, and they have the soldering equipment and everything else. So you're going to a specialty shop. Like, if this was a problem with with this main computer on my right, I would either take it apart myself or just go to, like, Canada Computers or something, and they'd be able to look at it, and they would go and they'd maybe swap a part out or fix this or fix that. And I've done that. I've gotten my power supply tested with that. With a MacBook, it's very different. A lot of the time, it's just, oh, just replace it, or just replace this part, or just replace this, or just replace that. And it seems like it's playing into a lot of the. It seems to be playing into the throwaway economy. And what I don't understand is a lot of developers, and it's probably because they're stuck, but a lot of developers use MacBooks, and oftentimes it's like sometimes they're not actually developing for Mac, so which is also strange. But what's weird is these are like quote unquote like starving developers, if you will. Like they're just getting started. They're beginners. Maybe they just quit their job and they're trying to work freelance or something like that. Imagine like a massive bill like that. The laptop that I just bought, which was like $2,600, is like a really good laptop. I could have gone way lower in an emergency situation. I could have gone to like $700. There's $300 computers around, like PCs around. I could piece together parts for like $500 if I desperately needed to in an emergency. I can't see you doing that with a Mac, especially now that you can kind of take it apart, but it's like the parts are hard to source, everything's soldered on there now in the more modern things. It's just it's too much money. There's not enough alternatives, and it's a mess. And I don't know if Mike has any other comment on that, but based on like what we were going through this week with the USB pass-through, like what a nightmare.
Yeah, the whole situation is essentially you're just locked into using this. And I mean, okay, so yes, Mac OS is not bad. It's not terrible. Like I can get used to the whole Mac OS aspect of everything. It's essentially Linux with the skin on it, whatever. I like Windows better, but that's fine. It's significantly worse. Like having run into the issues that I ran into last week, it is a lot worse for debugging. It is a lot worse for finding hardware issues. Like it does not have the diagnostics tools that Windows has, which sucks. And like I put bootcamped Windows on there just to monitor some of the voltages that I couldn't monitor in macOS because I just couldn't figure out how to monitor voltages in there. Easy to do on Windows. So I installed Windows on there and I could monitor voltages a little bit better. So when I took it into the shop, and this guy's a Mac expert and stuff like that, he thanked me for having Windows on there because he can't do his diagnostics on a Mac, on the Mac OS side. So that sucks about Mac OS as well. That's a side thing. But yeah, I don't like that I'm stuck. Like, I'm not a Mac guy. I don't ever want to be a Mac guy. But if I want a portable computer that I can take with me and do everything that is required of my job, I have absolutely no choice. And I don't think that's ever going to change. I don't think Mac's ever going to go and be like, oh, we're releasing Xcode and, debugging, iPad debugging, iOS debugging, Safari debugging for all the operating systems, Windows, Linux, whatever. I don't think that's ever going to happen because they love it, obviously. They love the closed garden aspect of it. They love it that developers have to buy them if they want to be able to service their entire clientele, all their client base, be able to test all the browsers. That's their goal. And obviously they're doing it to the best of their ability and doing a great job at it. And I would be like a capitalistic view on it is that I would be okay with it. If they had a good solution, if their device, their MacBook Pro that they sell for an exorbitant amount of money compared to everything else on the market, if it was a good device, if I legitimately I would not mind spending the money on it. Honestly, like the $3,000, yeah, it sucks, but I would be I would just do it and not even think about it if I didn't have to in the back of my mind constantly worry about this keyboard issue. This is constantly going to be a pain in the ass if I have to keep this notebook because I'm going to baby it. I'm going to put a keyboard cover on it. I am going to never eat near it. You know what I mean? I'm going to be very, very careful with my MacBook to make sure that I don't have this issue, especially when I'm traveling and I can't afford to lose a couple days or, lose my whole entire travel time for not being able to work. I might even have to bring an external, USB keyboard with me as a backup device just in case the keyboard craps out. That's the level that I would go to if I were to keep this device. Those are the kinds of things I would have to do to protect and actually use my $3,000 investment. Whereas if I bought the same laptop that Matt just bought, which was, it wasn't even $2,500, it was $2,200.
I forgot about the cashback. That's right. Yeah,
the cashback and all that, and even $200 with tax. It has a great graphics card. It has a great screen. All the keyboard is amazing on it. Lenovo has great keyboards. Everyone knows that. Yes, it's a little bit thicker. Maybe I wouldn't buy that exact laptop. But essentially I would probably buy something similar for much cheaper and have everything that I would possibly need and not be as afraid and I wouldn't have to baby it. I wouldn't have to treat this thing as if it's going to break tomorrow. You know what I mean? And I'm not treating it like as it's going to break tomorrow because it's a monetary issue, because these things can be repaired. Like I can take it to Apple. They have a good repair, like they have a good, replacement strategy. They have everything like that. But I'm treating it because those days that I would lose it for would be very essential probably to me. Because again, I lost it I didn't have a MacBook for like 4 or 5 days, and I was already in a panic because I was constantly getting contacted by my clients being like, where's the build? I need to get the build out. I was always worried that I would have to recreate my development environment on a new MacBook and stuff like that. Like it was a constant pain. It was a constant pressure on me. So it even hindered the rest of my workflow because I was constantly thinking about it. I couldn't do my regular go out and work during the week. So I felt like I was locked in for the whole week, which kind of sucked. So really not, again, if it were to go in for repair, it would be the same thing for me. I would just be in that constant panic mode. And it would affect me in not just the way that I don't have my MacBook. It would affect me because I'm worried that I need to use it right away and I don't have access to it. So that's my issue. And I don't know what the solution is right now. I'm really hoping that, again, that 2013 MacBook Pro is fixed and I'm able to use that, even if I can use that for a couple more years. Maybe, and crossing my fingers, I don't know if this is going to happen, obviously, because their track record is not great. Maybe they will fix the keyboard. Maybe they'll redesign the keyboard. And in 2 years, I'll buy a brand new MacBook and I'll be happy with it. But yeah, I just like, it's the issue for me is that almost every year that the MacBook has been released, there has been one major defining problem of each generation. There have been a few exceptions to those. I think like literally late 2013, the one that I have is supposed to be one of the better ones because I don't think it has a screen lamination issue and everything else kind of works. But after that, there's the screen lamination issue. So all of the ones that if anyone cleaned their screens constantly, they would have peeling, like the screen kind of peeling, and you would see it even when the screen is on. You would see these like blemishes all over the screen, which is a huge pain. So they had an extended warranty program for that even. So that Mac has acknowledged that problem. Whenever they have an extended warranty program, they extend the regular warranty to 4 years. And that's when they've acknowledged it at least. At least they're doing something about it. But like, and every year they have that. Now they have this keyboard problem. Then they have the display problem on the newer Macs as well, where it just starts turning off pretty much. So it's just... I feel like I'm repeating myself too much, so I'm going to stop doing that. But yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. I really hope Mac gets their stuff together. I want to hope, like, I'm fully okay with, again, buying a MacBook as long as I am confident in its ability to at least work.
I would agree with that. Like, I mean, we're bashing it a lot, and there's a lot there. There are alternatives. Like, you could find a good refurb. You could do this. You could do that. But the issue when you're a developer is that these machines are very expensive. You can't be buying a $200, redundant machine or something like that where you could have as a backup like you could with a PC. And so when you go to buy a redundant computer, buying a refurb is you're buying something that's generally, used to an extent, or open box or whatever, however the company dictates that. And so you're kind of shopping around, and generally speaking, it's not same day. The only same day thing is to go, the only same day sure thing is to go and purchase a new computer. And this isn't, again, 200, 500, 300. It's like, $3,000, like around $3,000. And remember, we're talking in Canadian prices, but it's around $3,000, something like that. And it's a big expense, and it's a big problem because if they're pigeonholing you so that you have to use their product, I mean, it's pretty smart, to be honest. Talking as a capitalist, like Mike kind of touched on this, but talking as a capitalist, it does make a lot of sense. Let's make sure they have to use our product, and let's make sure that they have to use, well, they don't have to, but generally speaking, they have to use our repair service, and we'll make sure that things are replaced and all that, and kudos for that, great. But when you make your product integral, you have to have a turnaround time that's faster than a couple of days. You have to have a turnaround time that's faster. I was reading years ago that there was some sort of big, I don't know if it was a scandal or just a complaint, but there was people were having car problems with some sort of recall on a car, and the warranty that they all had, because it was a brand new car, was, you can just do without your car for 30 days. Like, that's a part of the warranty. Like, whatever, it's just 30 days. What are you talking about? Like, you're still gonna get your money back. But it's like, there goes my commute vehicle. Like, there it goes. Like, these companies do need to an extent, have to understand that if you're becoming an integral part, yes, like, obviously we don't expect service within like 2 hours, or like within even, let's say, 24 hours. Like 24 hours would be ideal. Like if they're really slammed, 24 hours is even bad. But at the same time, it's like if you go to my carrier, for example, my cell phone carrier, I can get a loaner if my phone breaks, and it's not even the carrier's fault. It's the manufacturer's fault, or maybe I dropped it, or whatever was the break. The carrier covers me. Why aren't there like loaner MacBooks, or not? At least there aren't any that I'm aware of. And again, I'm not up to date on Mac, so you can always comment or something like that. And to be fair, the Mac in Cloud VM that we did use, because it was a trial, did work really good for a real quick spin up, and there were better packages and there were better ways to connect to and that type of thing. You can buy better spec. So there were better options and stuff like that for the certain packages. And I'm sure that if we spent more time with it, because we just were doing it in a panic, it would be a good solution. So maybe like a refurb's a good solution, or Mac in Cloud's a good solution, because obviously you could just rent another one or whatever if something went down. Maybe that's the solution here. But at the same time, it's an expensive solution, and it does rely on you having a really good internet connection, especially if you're transferring, reasonably sized files. And that's not always the case. I think we're relying on too many things. Admittedly, if you have a main PC and it goes down, yes, you're screwed as well, maybe for a week, 2 days, whatever, but it's much cheaper to just buy that quick replacement. Now, I think Mike has to take off here in a few minutes.
Yep.
So we're just going to conclude this episode. Like I said, there's going to be a bit of a structural change next week, and this episode was done in a real quick haste. But this was why it happened, and this is our thoughts on what happened. And so we'll be back next week with a full regular episode with just a few little structural tweaks, like we mentioned before. But thank you for listening, and make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing on the platform of your choice. You can follow us on the socials via @HTMLAllTheThings. That's on Facebook and Instagram. We're on Twitter, which is @HTMLEverything. We are on Medium. We are on GitHub. And remember, we are on Patreon, which is patreon.com/HTMLAllTheThings. Check out the tiers and give that a go. And feel free to leave a comment or a review on the platform that you are listening to this on. And we are signing off.